But if I accept the premise that every person wants to feel useful, I used to work in the mental health field, and it seemed to me that, yes, it was necessary for people to have counseling and assistance, but they were still people, and they wanted to feel useful and in some way contribute something. It could be a very, very small thing. Now, I volunteer, but, I have a home, I have a stable life, and for me, it's a choice I make. And I'm not suggesting that volunteerism should be involuntary, but, I'm told that, again, I think it was Ross, was my informant, that the food bank, for example, that there are recipients who are also volunteers. And I think that's terrific, because they are giving something back, and that make them feel good. I'm sure the food bank could get along without them, but that's not the point. I talked earlier, you heard Jennifer speak earlier, and giving her thanks to Yukon Learn for what she had learned from them. When I talked to her afterwards, Jennifer is also on the board of Yukon Learn. So, Jennifer, I said, why? What are you doing volunteering? Got other things to do. And she told me, I don't think she'd mind, I did ask her if I could use her name, that she can't work, but she has some intelligence, she can give, and it makes her feel good, and it contributes. So I had to ask myself, do we offer other opportunities? I mean, just think about your organization. Do we welcome people if they want to contribute a little bit, just for a little bit of time? Well, I think sometimes the churches do pretty well at that. I don't know, but I think some of them do. Salvation Army, I think, does that. I mean, isn't it incredible? I've lived here 30 years, and Salvation Army's been around, and I think does great work, as other people have mentioned. So this year, they opened a lounge so people would have a place to go during the day. 30 years. I mean, all the kudos to them. I mean, I think it's fabulous, but sometimes we just kind of forget the obvious. Maybe people just need a place to go during the day and have a cup of coffee. So I give great credit to them. So, and I know that some of the people there are volunteering. And so I say we look to ourselves, and many people here are volunteers. Why do it? Well, I think we do it because we feel we want to make a contribution. Well, why shouldn't other people feel that way too? So I would just say let's look at how we can build that concept of giving back into other areas. And I know everyone doesn't want to or can't do it. I mean, I'm not suggesting that. But maybe we're losing some of the community's resources by assuming that people who are receiving have nothing to give. Finally, it's not finally, not over yet. I want to talk about incentive killers. Certainly, Senator Siegel talked about that a bit. And I'm not in practice now, so I don't know all of the rules and regulations. Dear God, I hope there's not 800 for social welfare recipients in Whitehorse and Yukon, but I suspect there's not. Probably only 635. No, I don't think we're quite that bad. But I do think that we really all need to look at whether an NGO, a voluntary organization, or a government service, is there a policy that kills incentive? Now, I can't get quite as enthusiastic as Senator Siegel about the fact that if you make $4, you get to keep $2. Well, okay, I guess it's a step ahead. But if we had that guaranteed income that Senator Siegel and I and others support, we wouldn't have to do such a thing. To me, it's an incentive killer. Sorry. if I'm a person on assistance and my family income, for whatever reason, is increased because I've shown the initiative to somehow make some money, taking half of it back doesn't inspire me to make more and be independent, which I think if we look at the people who are receiving assistance and so on, the majority would like to be independent, would like to have a job, would like to have a way to contribute. Everybody's not going to have a job. I know that Rick's organization does a fabulous a job with what they're doing with challenges. And, you know, that's terrific, and that should continue. Talking about the guaranteed annual income, I think we could be a model. I think we should call it something else because, you know, people aren't going to like that. And Senator Siegel was right. We can come up, and he's the marketing expert. He can come up with something better. But I think we need something like that. I think we could do it here. I know it's fraught with many meetings, but it could be done. But you know who could do it tomorrow? Every First Nation. They have the jurisdiction, they have the funding, and they could do it. And wouldn't that be a model for the rest of us? Isn't it time we heard the good news stories? And there are a lot of them, and people like Doris McLean can tell us about them. There are a lot of good news stories here in First Nations communities. This would be a great one, Doris. And as an elder, and Andy and others, could be done tomorrow. Well, maybe next week. But it could be done because you have the jurisdiction and the funding. And so, that's my challenge. Show us how it's done, because I know you could do it. Priorities. Priorities are always tricky because we all have different ones. But here I have to talk about something that makes me really, really, really angry. And I have to refer to the building of hospitals in Watson Lake and Dawson. Now, I know you're going to say, oh my God, she's talking politics. Why did we ever ask her? But I have a couple of examples from elsewhere in other political parties. The Liberal government at the time thought they'd redo the whole civil service here in the Yukon. Well, that didn't work. An even more pertinent example is the NDP government, who decided that decentralization of correctional services was a good plan. Sounds great. So they established in Teslin a correctional facility of sort. If you look around, it's not there right now. And the reason is, it just wasn't practical to bring people into Whitehorse to court, the staffing. We're 33,000 people, folks. And while I think decentralization is a great concept, it doesn't always work on large issues. And I don't assume that any government, Liberal, NDP, or the current one, plan these things because they're evil or they have a really bad intent. I don't think they do. But I guess I've been around long enough that I remember, probably Hugh does too, very clearly when the government of Saskatchewan closed many community hospitals. It was not a pretty sight. So I think we really have to think carefully about priorities. I'm not saying that people in Watson Lake and Dawson don't deserve good health care. But health care is very complex these days. Surely we need midwives. We need good nurse practitioners, doctors who go to the communities. Do we really need 2 more hospitals? And how are we going to staff them? And what's the O&M? And I have to say, why don't we build houses for people who need them?